That Great Business Show, Ireland's best business podcast.
Welcome to episode 136 of That Great Business Show, posting on the 21st of April 2023. I am Conal O'Moran, Fáilte. In the next 45 minutes, we bring you brilliant business tips, insights, and opportunities, all thanks to our sponsor, Done Deal. Shortly, a business that is cleaning up, literally, but a business like so many others suffering from staff shortages. So, what are they doing about it? Also, following on from the near $800 million court-imposed fine on Fox News, we ask, is it possible a court can put a business out of business? Please follow us on our website, thatgreatbusinessshow.com, and we'll send you your own personal copy of the podcast every week. You can be first to hear all our great business opportunities, the early bird catching the worm and all of that. All our business tips and insights are thanks to Done Deal Motors, our sponsor, and the only place you should go to buy your new or previously loved motor.
Done Deal Motors is home to Ireland's largest range of new and premium used cars. That's why you'll find cars from Audi and BMW dealerships on Done Deal. Are you looking for a 7-seater to accommodate your growing family? Maybe you're after a luxury saloon to make a statement. We have the car for you. You'll also find Ireland's largest range of electric cars to help you make the switch. Visit donedeal.ie today to start the search for your next car.
De facto shaving oil, the world's best shaving oil, made in Mayo, sold worldwide.
All That Great Business Show advertisers are Team GBS approved. Back them.
Now, it's telling that when you go onto the website of our first company on this episode, you're met with a button that says, apply for a job, which is probably more prominent than the tab that explains what they actually do. Derrycourt Cleaning Specialists are one of the biggest Irish-owned cleaning businesses in the country. A family business founded 30 years ago. They now have 700 customers and a pretty impressive 2,000 staff cohort. Avril McCarthy is General Manager at Derrycourt and joins me now in studio. Avril, welcome to That Great Business Show.
Thank you very much, Conal. Thank you for having me.
I said that your surname is McCarthy, but it's not really, because it's a family business and the family are?
O'Hanlon.
And you are really Avril O'Hanlon.
I am indeed, yes.
Tell us about the business, because you've been 31 years actually, I think, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Growing. So you presumably started off, without being derogatory, with a bucket and mop, and now 2,000 people. That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to manage on a day-to-day basis, all right. Well, look, I suppose the business was started back in 1992 by my parents, Anne and Martin.
By the mammy?
Yes, primarily, but my dad absolutely was there behind her and supported her, but it was definitely her challenge and she took it on with all her might. And I suppose, Ben, I would have been in and out of the business, helping out through school when the cleaner was sick or there was short staff. You know, I was a spare cleaner and I was sent to go wherever
Were
was
you
required.
paid?
I was paid.
Oh,
yes,
good.
I actually was paid. Now, I have to be fair. Most of the time. So I suppose that led me to being quite familiar with the business. Sometimes I helped out on the office end as well in summer holidays. And then after I finished college, I suppose my mum had said, would I come into the office for that summer, that she had some difficulties in the office and she wasn't really sure how to resolve them. So that was back in 2000, so 23 years ago, I went in for 6 months.
We never admit to anything old here. It's just a while ago.
Just a while ago, yes.
Now, you said when you finished your college, but I was looking at your LinkedIn page. I don't think you've actually finished college. How many pieces of paper have you collected over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I went back to UCD a number of years ago and I completed a couple of postgrad diplomas.
Many of them in management.
Yes, so strategy, innovation, advanced performance management, and which culminated in a master's then in UCD as well in senior management development.
Now, the fact that you've done them means that you're going to tell me that they're all brilliant, but was it worth, because I'm always asking these questions for other people, was it worth your while doing those courses?
If I have to be very honest...
We love that.
It was worth my while in terms of my own self-confidence. That's what I would say. Did I learn something? Of course I did. But ultimately, has it changed how I've done things in the business? Not hugely. I think it just made me feel that I was equal to anybody else, whereas probably going in to do it, I felt everybody was better than me and I wouldn't know how to do this and I wouldn't be able to do it. So I think that made me realise that I was definitely
How do you manage 2,000 people?
With great difficulty and a huge support team. So we would have a huge number of managers, area managers, regional managers, a big HR department, and they probably, between our area managers, regionals and HR department, probably make up about 45 people.
That's a lot.
And that's in addition to that, then we would have site managers and supervisors, etc. We would have a separate quality team, an audit team, health and safety. And on top of that, then there's a whole other host of finance and customer service, etc. But on the staff side, those 45 people are actively managing them day to day.
You forget that it is I don't forget that it's a big business, but there's always a hell of a lot more to do than just clean, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose cleaning, really, it is a science. A lot of people would say, oh, should just go out with your bucket and your mop. But it absolutely is a science. And
talk to me about the science.
Well, I suppose it's looking at it from the chemical perspective, the equipment perspective, making sure that you're choosing the correct chemicals equipment, making sure that the dosage of chemical that you use is correct. From a staffing perspective, I think the science behind it from staffing perspective is, all of our staff receive infection control and prevention training. Again, chemical safety, electrical safety, general cleaning skills. But as I say, there's a particular skill set to it. And if you do it the wrong way, it doesn't have the output or the outcome that is required to deliver the service. So I suppose from our perspective, there's a huge investment in training with our staff.
Such as? How much training do you give people coming on board?
So somebody brand new into the company has a day's training with the company before they start. That would be at our head office. There would also be, before that, they would also have an element of online training that they would also have to take. But then it's face-to-face in our head office. So that's a day. And then when they do start, within their probation period, then they would be brought back for further accredited training. So we work with the British Institute of Cleaning Science, and our training then to the staff is all accredited and they receive a recognised qualification as a cleaning professional.
You know, because from all the pieces of paper that you collected from UCD, there's a thing called barriers to entry, and it's a great way of keeping people out of your business if the barriers to entry are high. I'm going to guess, and maybe I'm being again unfair, that there are low barriers of entry to get into your sector, which must mean margins are paper thin.
Absolutely, yeah. Barriers to entry are quite low, especially if it's a small company starting off.
So how do you keep them out?
How do you keep them out? It's really quality and training. That's it. So the fact that we provide quality service that is managed, that we have a quality function. So our quality function would make up of auditors, and the auditors take unannounced visits to our client sites, and the client nor our staff will know when they're visiting. And I suppose we're able to inspect the service that's being provided and is it in line with the SLA. But ultimately it's training. And I suppose staff feel confident when they are trained in delivering the service. And in turn, then they realise that there's other opportunities to grow within the company, or there's non-cleaning related courses that they can also avail of. So I suppose that's on the staff side. But then on, I suppose, from a competitive side, it's doing what we say we're going to do on time, really, I think is key.
And trying to keep ahead of the posse, because the posse is right behind you all the time.
Yes.
What's the next thing? What could you do? What can you do to try to keep away from certainly the bottom feeders, the fellas who are willing to do it for half nothing?
So again, it's coming back to, it's like innovations. People hear every day from our clients, oh, what's the innovations and what can you deliver? But people, from my experience, a lot of clients view innovation as you're going to give me a much cheaper way of doing it because you're introducing innovation. That's not always the case. So in our industry, there's a lot around now robotics or cobotics. So I suppose...
Who are cobotics?
Well, cobots is what our industry is taken to more so than robots. So a robot obviously will work on its own solo, whereas a cobot would be effectively a robot, but it has an employee working alongside them. So if you think of a robotic vacuum, we would, let's say, have a cleaning operative in the area who would be working alongside the robotic vacuum. The vacuum can go up and do what it needs to do, but our cleaner can now clean the desks instead of having to vacuum. So there is efficiency, but these are expensive pieces of kit, and the client, it's built into their cost. So the assumption is, oh, I'm going to make it back, but they do, but because they're expensive, it takes a good period of time to get that return on investment.
And do you have a cobot or a robot?
So it's a robot,
okay,
but we call it a cobot.
Okay, well, we'll call it a robot cobot. How many of those would you have?
Very few, because they're not very suitable to most environments. So they're really only suitable to really vast, large open spaces. So airports, convention centres, huge IT type buildings.
But they presumably are heading that way. They're going to become more efficient, smaller, etc.
Yes. Now there are more smaller domestic type ones that people use at home.
And all that, yeah.
Yes. But again, they don't have the durability that would be required in an industrial setting.
So it ain't going to happen soon. Which brings me neatly around to the 2,000 people that you do have. And I mentioned at the very beginning that you've got a huge big button saying apply now for a job, because like so many other sectors, yours cannot find enough good people. Absolutely. What are you going to do?
What are we going to do? What's anybody going to do? I suppose, look, we've tried a lot of initiatives, and from going abroad to try and bring people in, and that included us finding housing for them. It actually included us buying property.
Get away, really?
It did. Accommodating staff and property that the company bought. All of which, I have to say, didn't really work out in the long term. The properties are still there, staff are still living in them, but it's not something that really has worked out as we would have planned.
Which means that you are still keen to hire. How many people would you hire if you could find them?
We would have vacancies for up to about 100 people today if we could find them.
And what are you going to do? Do you keep awake all night thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Or have you just thrown in the towel?
We've been there at that point in terms of the staying awake at night. So what we've moved to now is, what I will say is that it has got a little bit easier in these last couple of weeks. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. There's a couple of reasons potentially why. Through COVID, we did benefit from getting a lot of staff who moved when retail was closed or hospitality was closed, and we benefited from a lot of those staff moving to our industry. When retail reopened and hospitality reopened, a good number of staff went back to the industry that they knew. However, it hasn't been as stable in those industries as it previously was. And because of that lack of stability, we have, I think in about the last couple of months, we would have had about 60 staff who previously worked for us who have returned. They had left us, but they have returned. Yeah. And not all, but a lot of them are coming from that type of background, that it hasn't been as stable as they thought. Our industry is stable. They have the flexibility that they need. And that's another thing with our industry. It's very, very flexible. So if people say, I can only work 2 hours in the morning, or I can work 6 hours in the middle of the day, we will always be able to find shifts to fit in with people's requirements.
But as a company employing 2,000 people, you really are looking at big contracts only. You're not doing small domestic stuff and stuff like that, no?
No domestic. It's all...
Is that just too hard, or...?
Well, generally the number of hours isn't enough. So I suppose it doesn't become viable for us or for employees to arrive in Mary's house once every Friday for 3 hours. So from a financial perspective, it doesn't work for us or the employee. And then I suppose it's also just really the continuity of staff. It's because staff are so important to us and they're so hard to find and so hard to keep. It's all about, will this interest somebody?
And if it's hard for you to find, it's hard for everybody to find. And we had a chat beforehand and you said that some of the larger Irish companies have been bought by overseas.
Yes.
Is that going to continue, do you think? Or maybe, let me ask you, are you guys for sale?
We're not. No. I will say we have lots of inquiries on an ongoing basis from competitors and other people in the market.
But why would they want to buy you if it's so difficult? If you can't find people, they can't find people. Well, it's not really a sector that you can solve an issue with at the moment.
No, but I think for maybe some of the companies that have been interested in buying us, they view us as a solely contract cleaning service provider, whereas a lot of the other companies are probably more facility management and they're delivering a variety of services. And perhaps now I think there's a realisation that the core of cleaning services does have a niche to it. And I suppose our business is attractive in that way, in that we stayed focused.
And if you can find the missing 100 or more, plans for expansion, where can you go next?
So again, there's opportunity to, grow the business further in different parts of Ireland. Like we're throughout Ireland, but we would be small in certain pockets. Northern Ireland would be very small for us. So most definitely there's opportunities to grow there. UK is another option, but it's probably not somewhere that we want to go. We're happy, I suppose, as a family, that Ireland is enough for us. And I think, a lot of our competitors have went down the UK route and it has worked for them, but we're happy enough to stay in Ireland.
I'm looking at a big smile on her face. I think that you must have plans for Britain, have you?
No.
Definitely not.
No, definitely not at this point in time, because obviously, I suppose, the way we are as a family is that we would very much have to be there at the forefront of it and leading it.
Yeah, and you ain't moving.
And I'm not moving, no. I have 3 kids that are very well settled here, so no, we won't be taking flight.
So can you expand any other which way? Is there some other services that what's next, or what add-ons can you do?
Well, I suppose, again, it's looking at we do provide an element of facility management as it is, but as I said, that our core focus is on contract cleaning. So what we provide on the FM side of it, we generally partner with other companies and we subcontract out the work, and we would have partnerships that they would operate in a similar space and they would subcontract back to us. So there's definitely opportunity to build further on those partnerships. There's opportunities to, I suppose, provide an awful lot more in terms of the chemicals and consumable products, paper, toilet rolls, all of those type of things. So there's we do provide them, but again, it's an area that can be much more enlarged.
That you are looking at, I think, at the moment. So if you are looking for, I presume you get most of your businesses through tenders, do you?
Yeah, so a lot of it would be e-tenders, government type tenders, and then referrals.
Does that really cheese you off when you spend a long time, because I'm familiar with e-tenders, and then it doesn't happen, or somebody that you know, or you believe anyway, is a lesser operator than you, and they get the business? Does that really cheese you off?
It does. It's very frustrating. But to be fair to, I suppose, the officials that have to administer these tenders, they are set by criteria that comes, I think, via an EU directive, and it's based on the most economically advantageous tender. Which
means low price.
Exactly.
And low price does not mean good clean.
No, and I suppose with that in mind, I'm also, I'm the chairperson of the Irish Contract Cleaning Association, and I also represent the Irish contract cleaning industry at a European level with the EFCI. And I know that the EFCI at present have a big campaign ongoing around that element of public procurement, and that, I suppose, EU directive of most economically advantageous tender absolutely is not always advantageous to the purchaser, being the government, that they often don't end up with the service that they need.
Which is, I've often thought about that and how difficult that is, because you're a taxpayer, I'm a taxpayer, and I want to have the lowest operator if I can, doing whatever service it is. But being in business, you're in business, I'm in business, and I also know that cheap does not mean good.
Absolutely. So look, hopefully some changes can come about there that would definitely be helpful for everybody. What
can Team GBS, that's our listeners, what can they do for you besides give you the biggest tenders, the biggest contracts that they can? Is there anything that you need or would like them to help you with?
We'll make as many staff referrals to us as they possibly can. And I suppose...
Are other people nicking your staff?
Look, we're all fighting for the same pool.
People.
We're all fighting for the same pool of people. And when staff move on, sometimes you can understand. Sometimes it's because they've got a better opportunity and it's better pay because of our tight margins. And there is, I suppose, an employment regulation order for our industry as well that sets the minimum pay rates. And because there's minimum pay rates, there's definitely a good point to that. But from a client side, clients realise, well, that's the minimum pay that's in your industry, so why would you pay more? So it's very hard to pay staff more. So I suppose, look, we do unfortunately lose staff to competitors, but we also gain a lot of staff, and it swings and roundabouts.
So anybody, so long as they can get in the door who wants to go cleaning, you're hiring.
We do have a requirement that you can speak and understand English. But outside of that, we will provide you with full training.
Cool. Well, yes. See what we can do now. You're not allowed out the door yourself without answering. Who would Avril McCarthy hire in a heartbeat?
Who would I hire in a heartbeat? Well, this is a tough one, but I would say Miriam O'Callaghan.
Very interesting. She's not taken Ryan Tubridy's job, so she might be available to you.
She just might be.
And what would you use Miriam for? She's very tall, so she could do the top of the presses.
Oh, fantastic auditor now, I'd say, being able to go around and check everything. What would I say we would use her for? I definitely think on the marketing and PR, and she might be good on employee branding. It might just attract a few more employees in.
Well, she is, and I know her. She's such a lovely person and completely down to earth. So we'll make a connection there. Great. And see whether she'll join you.
Thanks a million.
Avril McCarthy, General Manager at Derrycourt. Thanks very much for joining us on That Great Business Show.
Dundeel Motors is home to Ireland's largest range of new and premium used cars. That's why you'll find cars from Audi and BMW dealerships on Dundeel. Are you looking for a 7-seater to accommodate your growing family? Maybe you're after a luxury saloon to make a statement. We have the car for you. You'll also find Ireland's largest range of electric cars to help you make the switch. Visit dundeel.ie today to start the search for your next car.
Viscosity. When you shave, you want the highest viscosity because it helps the blade run smoother. De facto, the world's best shaving oil, has incredible viscosity. That's why De facto leaves your face, underarms or legs nick-free. Higher viscosity makes blades last longer. De facto is the best for your skin and your pocket. DeFactoShave.com.
All That Great Business Show advertisers are Team GBS approved. Back them.
Joining me now is barrister Peter Leonard, That Great Business Show's in-house counsel and also co-presenter of the Fifth Court podcast. Peter is here to answer a question thrown up by the $800 million odd fine imposed on Fox News arising from the Dominion voting case. Now, Fox has $4 billion in the bank, so they won't be going out of business soon. But we were wondering, could a court actually impose a fine great enough to put a business out of business? Peter Leonard, welcome back to That Great Business Show.
Conal, it is good to be back. I was worried that you had lost my phone number or something, but
you were
apparently
too busy
apparently not. You were
the
just
Fifth Court with your pal Mark Tottenham.
Yes, okay.
And before, I'm just going to make sure that people know about it. The Fifth Court is 25 odd episodes old.
That's right.
You are number 4 in the business charts.
Yes.
And I take, as producer, phone calls on your behalf. People love it.
Yeah, and I think people were wondering where we went to, and it was just a kind of a confluence of events. We had a difficulty. We were on the road and we were trying to record a number of shows, and for whatever reason it didn't happen. And then we were away and it was Easter and various different things. So we said, you know what, let's blow the whistle for a couple of weeks, settle ourselves down, and we're going to be back, and we're recording again tomorrow. And we have a great first topic back. It's Wikipedia and Irish judgments. And this is a survey that was carried out by academics in Maynooth with help from their friends across the Atlantic pond in some of the Ivy League schools on the east coast of America. And they came up with this conclusion that if it was contained in Wikipedia, it had a better chance of being in Irish judgments. Now, the judges aren't happy about that at all. So we're going to talk to the academic who produced this research. This is our first show back. I think this is going to be a cracker. And we're also going to make the counter-argument that's been advanced primarily by Judge Mr. Richard Humphreys, who's taken on the mantle of defending the judiciary in relation to this matter. It's going to be a cracker, Connell. It's going to be good.
But that's not the only one, because I think you have international, am I allowed to mention international guests coming in?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Dominic Carman, very famous English legal advocate, but not a lawyer as such. But he is the son of probably the most famous lawyer of the late 20th century in Britain, George Carman, libel lawyer extraordinaire, who would have loved this case that we're going to talk about today, Connell. He would have loved this one. He'd have loved this one.
We'll segue into that shortly.
He'd have loved the fees of this one.
I want to make sure that people understand that the Fifth Court podcast is not aimed at lawyers. Lawyers are allowed to listen.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's an attempt to try and make law, dare I say it, interesting, fun maybe, but also informative to the general public. And the joy is, obviously we have lawyers who listen to it because they love kind of hearing about themselves, don't they, you know? But we really want people who are non-lawyers to tune in, and I think we have a good audience in that area, and that's the joy. When I meet somebody who's not a lawyer and said they enjoyed it, and I've had people who've listened to it and said, I thought that it was going to be a bit dodgy, but we really liked it. And that is a result.
On Sunday, I was with two Californians who headed to West Cork to hear and see more about Ian Bailey, and I told them that Frank Buttimer, Ian Bailey's solicitor, was on the Fifth Court and is a must listen to.
Absolutely. If you don't enjoy the Frank Buttimer podcast, I mean, he is just the most wonderful talker. He gives the whole narrative of the Ian Bailey story, which we know led to two Netflix series, or maybe Netflix and another series. Jim Sheridan. Was it a movie or something? I don't know what it was. But it's a cracker of a listen, I think, and we've had a few more that have been really good as well. So I think we've tried to make it. The trick is to try and make it accessible to a broad audience, and that has worked. And our guests have always been very forthcoming. We try and make them comfortable. It's not confrontational in style of interview, but we do get to the nitty gritty.
There was one where there was a bit of confrontation, and your guest pointed that
he thought he had been cross-examined. He said he didn't want to be cross-examined by me in the box, and I think, well, in fairness, but he survived, and tell you, he was well able for me. No better man. So
there are
all
25
good.
Episodes already sitting there to be listened to. Anyway, the reason that you are here is because of this fascinating case, which unfortunately did not go to trial, but settled on the court's steps. I'm sure they've got steps there as we have steps on the four courts here. And the Fox News were made pay almost $800 million, a chunk of change, as we say, to Dominion Voting, because they were a bit naughty. So,
yeah,
do you want to discuss it? Or
yeah, of course. No, absolutely. And just not to take issue with you, Connell, I could never do that, esteemed producer that you are, but it wasn't a fine. It's a settlement figure. So it's a settlement figure that was reached between the two parties.
I am corrected.
And it did happen on the metaphorical steps of the court. And we know those beautiful steps in New York. Remember Henry Fonda in that kind of Armand and Havana suit walking down the steps after 12 Angry Men? Do you remember that?
I do.
How cool is that? How cool is that?
It is a brilliant movie.
But so what happened here was effectively a company called Dominion. Now, who are they? They are a company that made the machines that you use, the electronic voting machines that you use. One of the companies. There's a number of companies.
We don't use them here anymore.
Well, didn't we have that once upon a time? Noel Dempsey, I think, was the minister at the time, and then we were paying a fortune to put them in a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. Wasn't that it?
Correct.
Crazy stuff. But anyway, these machines were used in the 2020 presidential election. And we know that when the votes were counted, a gentleman by the name of Joe Biden was elected president of the United States. But the incumbent at the time was one Donald J. Trump. And he was insistent that he had actually won the election, even though he got less votes. But the reason he said he got less votes was because the whole thing was rigged. And his, I suppose, cheerleader-in-chief in relation to this, in terms of a media outlet, was Fox News. Now, we don't get Fox News over here. Well, at least I don't. Maybe some people can access it. But we know that Fox News it has an editorial line, which is unusual in broadcasting corporations. If you look what we have here, we have a Broadcasting Act where you basically have to give the same amount of airtime to both sides. Now, Fox News doesn't play like that. It has one side and one side only, and it trumpets that side all the time. And in relation to this, it basically said that this vote machine making company was complicit in a false return at the end of the election. And they basically said that they had been engaged in vote rigging, and that this was a completely serious, very, very serious charge to be made against this company. It undermined their business completely. So they took defamation proceedings. Now, we know these defamation proceedings were taken in America. If you take defamation proceedings in Ireland, you only have to prove that what was said was false. There are certain times you can get away with it if there's occasions of privilege, such as qualified privilege, which means that the hearer of the information, though incorrect, had an interest in hearing the information, and you believed that that person had an interest, so therefore you said it, and there was no malice involved. That can be a protection here. But generally, if something is false, it's defamatory, and you're entitled to compensation. Not so in America. And this goes back to the 1960s, I think 1962, if I'm not correct, a very famous case called New York Times versus Sullivan. And this was a decision of the US Supreme Court, but it came from a decision that was made in Alabama. And basically it related to an ad that was carried by the New York Times, which had been paid for and sponsored by Martin Luther King as part of a civil rights movement. And they had put various different things where they had been critical of the Alabama police force, I think, Connell. And they had said things that were inaccurate. The police chief, who was called Sullivan, an Irish name, there are not so many down there in the deep south, I thought. Maybe in Gone with the Wind, were they Irish? But anyway, he took a case and he went to the court in Alabama, and they immediately found for him and said this is outrageous and gave him a huge compensatory payout. The New York Times appealed it to the Alabama Supreme Court, lost there as well, and then ultimately it was appealed to the Supreme Court in Washington. And there, the issue of the First Amendment and the right to freedom of speech came into play. And in a very famous judgment by the leading judge at the time was a guy called William Brennan, brilliant jurist.
Another Irish lad, is it?
Another Irish lad. And he was central to that decision. And he basically said that your First Amendment's rights are that you can say anything you want. The only way, and if it's in relation to a public figure, and a public figure can't be critical of that, unless the comments were made on the basis of actual malice. So if you're saying something that you know is untrue and you're doing it to deliberately do somebody down, that is not allowed. But if you say something and you get it wrong, but you just say it, it's a throwaway remark, or you say it, half believing it to be true, but you didn't check out the veracity of the statement, that is not a libelous statement. And as a result, New York Times would. And that's why, you can see things published in America, and First Amendment rights, the right to freedom of expression is in play all the time. So in this case, do you want me to take a break? I'm talking for a long time here.
No, you keep going. Because I know
I'm going to take apologies.
My lord, he'll come to a point eventually because
I need to take a sip of something. I have a very bad throat. I have a head cold at the moment in this beautiful April weather. So effectively what happened in this case was Dominion said, you have impugned our reputation. You've said that we engaged in a falsehood in the way we conducted our business in the course of the election.
Pretty fundamental.
Fundamental, and that we were engaged in vote rigging, which is contrary completely to our business and completely untrue falsehood, okay? So they decided to take a 1.6 billion case against Fox News. And basically, in order to succeed, it wasn't sufficient for them to say that Fox News were telling untruths or were telling lies about it or were doing anything. They had to show that actually Fox News knew what they were saying was untrue. That actually the people that were broadcasting these lies actually had information which showed that the commentary that they were giving out on the network was untrue. So this is fascinating. And there wouldn't have been a settlement in this case unless that actual information was there. So the case was due to take place ironically, in Wilmington, Delaware, which is the hometown of Joe Biden, who we all know, who came to Ireland last week in all his glory. But also it is where a lot of companies in America are domiciled for tax reasons in Wilmington, in Delaware, and Fox Corp is domiciled there. So the case was scheduled to take place there. The judge was a fellow called Eric Davies, who'd been appointed in 2010. So that's pre-Donald Trump. Very important in relation to this because Donald Trump has filled the benches in America. And the two parties came together and they had a negotiation. A jury was sworn in yesterday, which was Tuesday, for the purposes of your listeners. But prior to opening statements being made, the parties asked for more time to talk. It was a biscuit, it's a bar. They fought it out and they eventually settled on $787 million compensation package for Dominion from Fox Corp. So their lead lawyer, who's a guy called Justin Nelson, came out and said, money is accountability. We have been vindicated and we have received accountability.
And well done them. But the question remains, say, and Fox have $4 billion cash, and I'm sure assets way, way, way beyond that. If the judge decided to a fine now, not a settlement that we've agreed with, if he fined them, make up a number, 10 billion, could he put them out of business?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, but the point is, this isn't the end of the road. I mean, there's a couple of companies waiting in the long grass for Fox News.
1.4 billion or something, is there?
Yeah, it's a company called Smart Attack, I think, or something like that. Is it Smart? Yes, Smartmatic, which is a company that was ironically set up in Florida in 2000. Do you remember the Dimple Chads and the Hanging Chads? Al Gore, George Bush, and George Bush succeeded. It ultimately went to the Supreme Court. I think the casting vote was one Clarence Thomas, who's been in the news recently. So anyway, but
for going on holidays.
Yes, well, they and been bankrolled by a certain individual. But they set up this company, and they're saying that their company was also impugned in commentary from commentators on Fox News. I know in the Dominion one, they were talking about Tucker Carlson, who's the big broadcaster in that. I think he's the Gay Byrne of Fox News.
Poor Gay Byrne will turn
well, he might.
grave.
Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but just be the big personality on the network. But in this case, they're going after the business correspondents. Conal, you might not like that now. You might be upset. You might bring down the shutters on my commentary here. So they're going after them, and they're also suing Rudy Giuliani, who was a guest on the show and made certain defamatory comments. But they also have to have information to show that when the person who was broadcasting on Fox News said something that was untrue, and we've no doubt about it that these were lies and untruths, but that they actually knew when they were saying it that they knew it was untrue. So that's a very high level of proof, but there has been a lot of work done digging up information, and these companies obviously have that information, or else there wouldn't have been a settlement. And
bring it all back home. In Ireland, one could be put out of business by the courts, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so that was the question you asked me.
A while ago.
Yeah, a while ago. Absolutely. Sorry, I digress. Can I say one final thing? This is just a thing of beauty.
Who are you, Columbo? One more thing.
You'll love this. I know it's 100 years ago that you used to be a PR executive of great renown. But afterwards, Fox, after giving $800 million for this, said that the settlement represented our continued, this is the quote, this is a direct quote, our continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards. Isn't that a thing of beauty? Isn't that it? Paper will not refusing, so there you go. Okay, let's get back to the question you asked me.
You have to be brief.
Okay, I will be brief. Absolutely, you can be put out of business as a result of a court order. obviously in terms of a settlement, you won't agree to a settlement that's going to put you out of business. But if the court makes an order and if you're suing for a certain amount of money and the company can't meet that money, well, then the company will immediately go into liquidation straight away. And that has happened many times in Irish businesses. It's the same thing. Remember, a company is a corporate personality. It's the same with a human individual. If I sue you for some reason, Conal, and it goes on and on and on and on and on, and then ultimately I lose and you get an award of damages, and then I have to pay your legal fees and I have to pay my legal fees, I may well have to sell my little house, you know, and I might end up with nothing. And there are many cases that have gone through the courts where litigants, unsuccessful litigants, are declared bankrupt and they are the subject of bankruptcy proceedings. So, I mean, this is a big issue in terms of the courts, as people like me who sometimes take cases on behalf of people who don't have a lot of means. They're always terrified of a court order against them. Not that they will be made bankrupt, but that it is money that they can't afford to pay. And yet they might have really, really good cases. And I'm itching to get into court and represent them. But they say to me, can you guarantee me that it's not going to cost me in my pocket, that the judge is going to fine for me and that it's not going to be an order of costs? And I can never do that because we can't tell the future. Yeah. I ain't no clairvoyant.
But you are Peter Leonard. Final question. Who would you hire in a heartbeat?
Well, I've done this a number of times, Conal, and I've been quite creative with some of my suggestions.
You keep changing.
This one, I'm going right to the top, and my hire in a heartbeat is one Lionel Messi. Did you ever hear of him? I
might have heard of him, yeah. He'd actually be able to pay your fees.
Well, there you go. But can I say, for sentimental reasons, just this weekend, I brought my two sons over to Paris to see a Paris Saint-Germain game. And I booked the tickets ages ago. Hard to get the tickets. And I was just praying that we would see Messi because it could be his last year playing competitive football in Europe. There's talk of him going back to South America. So we arrived in the ground and we saw the team sheet. And he was playing. And then, in the course of the game, he scored an absolute screamer. It was a 1-2 with Mbappe, and he finished it off with the left foot into the corner of the net. So we saw him. So there you go. That's a man who delivers. We were looking forward to this for a long time. We arrive into Paris, and Messi gives us everything we wanted. We saw the World Cup captain scoring a goal.
And for those who don't know Peter Leonard, in another life, he was a sports journalist.
Amongst other things.
Would you guess? Peter, thank you so much for joining us on That Great Business Show.
Done Deal Motors is home to Ireland's largest range of new and premium used cars. That's why you'll find cars from Audi and BMW dealerships on Done Deal. Are you looking for a 7-seater to accommodate your growing family? Maybe you're after a luxury saloon to make a statement. We have the car for you. You'll also find Ireland's largest range of electric cars to help you make the switch. Visit donedeal.ie today to start the search for your next car.
Viscosity. When you shave, you want the highest viscosity because it helps the blade run smoother. De facto, the world's best shaving oil, has incredible viscosity. That's why De facto leaves your face, underarms, or legs nick-free. Higher viscosity makes blades last longer. De facto is the best for your skin and your pocket. DeFactoShave.com.
All That Great Business Show advertisers are Team GBS approved. Back them.
And that is it from That Great Business Show, episode 136. 45 minutes of business insights and inspiration. Thanks to our sponsor, Done Deal Motors. Do get in touch with us on our website, thatgreatbusinessshow.com. Do talk to us on LinkedIn. Do give us ads if you so wish. We are the voice of the SME. We record at the Dublin South Podcast Studios, where today we have a great business show newbie, Ramon Darcy, busy woofing his woofer and tweaking his bass. Later, Neil Horner will take out the Silvo and polish us up further, making us like no other podcast. So, from me, Conal O'Moran and Míle Buíochas for listening, agus Slán Tamil.